Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from who do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Unto you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another Let's Do the Spirit. Now I'm entitled this one, America is Circling the Drain. Going into how this place that we call America, which is Babylon the Great, spoken about in the scriptures, that is prophesied to be destroyed by the way of intercontinental ballistic missiles, by the way of fire, to end this current world, this current age, this current aeon being ran by the so-called white man, which is Esau Edom. But first, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is going to tear it piece by piece, just like he did Egypt back then during the time of the Exodus, during the time of the time that Moses was on the scene, where he led the nation of Israel out of Egypt into the wilderness to lead, the remnant of those who exited the land of Egypt, because the whole nation of Israel did not make it into the promised land. Ultimately, that remnant was the only ones who entered into the promised land, because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai put the wicked of our people during the wilderness to death, but also he had the remnant running around, with the rest of the nation of Israel in circles for 40 years, so he could purge the Egyptian ways out of us. And he's doing the same thing today, allowing us to detach from America, from this place fully. So when all hell breaks loose, when this system collapses, we could be ready and just be ready to be pilgrims upon the earth. But first, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is sending all these different plagues, all these different pestilences, famines, wars, and rumors of wars. He's crashing the economy. He's allowing Esau Edom to lay all these people off their jobs, because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, he's about fed up with this place, just like the elect will be fed up, sighing and crying for all the abominations that are done in the midst thereof. So through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, we're praying to the Lord to collapse this place, to bring this devil down. We throw up curses on a daily, and ultimately they're working, because it's clear and evident that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is pulling the plug on this place. Because you see the mirth is being wiped away. You have all these restaurants, all these music venues closing down, all these people getting laid off in mass numbers, companies shutting down, businesses shutting down, mom and pops businesses shutting down, because ultimately this place is ready to collapse. And once it collapses, that's when that new digital system is going to be introduced by the MOTB, written about in Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. The majority of the world, especially 2/3 of our people, they're not going to be ready for it, because they've gotten so used to the comforts of Babylon the Great that it's going to be nothing for them to take that MOTB, that Karagma, so they could get those comforts back. And you got these Edomites mad as all hell, because they were sold a dream by Donald Trump that he was going to make America great again, but ultimately it was bullshit, and now they're finding that out, and ultimately they're going to blame it on Jake. They're blaming it on Jake. They're blaming it on black culture and Latino culture. They call it black fatigue. But ultimately, who's the one that's making inflation at an all-time high? He's laying people off. Jake ain't doing that. It's the so-called white man, which is Esau Edom. Because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai has put it upon the spirit of this devil to crash this system, so he could pave the way for that new digital system that's going to be spearheaded by the MOTB, which is the Micro Seahib. This is Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 7. Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. They made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken over wine Therefore, the nations are mad. And what Babylon is ultimately speaking about? Speaking about Mystery Babylon, Babylon the Great, which is prophesied to be destroyed by fire, which today will be America. Because you got a lot of these Christians, these other Israelite camps that are teaching false doctrine. They're like, oh, nah, America's not going to be destroyed. It's not in the scriptures. But ultimately, this is speaking about America, because who has pushed out its philosophies, its way of life, its dollar, its currency, the image of the beast, alphabet agenda, feminism, is America. And all these nations that America has invaded, that put the sword to, to bow the knee or get put to death, is ultimately going into America, because all these countries, Middle Eastern countries, China, and even Russia, conservative countries that have taken on the ways of Babylon, they're tired of this whore, because they see that his behavior is nothing but degenerate, at least degeneracy. And that's why America's so fucked up. That's why it's the way it is, because that Babylonian wine, and ultimately all these nations are tired of this whore. They're tired of America. And that's why they're doing away with the dollar. They're done doing business with America. You got all these tariffs being imposed on America, and then America's imposing tariffs on them back. That's ultimately because all these countries, they're tired of this whore. And even his allies are going to turn on his whore. Like it says, the beast shall hate the whore. All these so-called allies that the U.S. has left, they're all going to stab America in the back. Verse 8, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain. If so, she may be healed. That's what's going to happen to America. It's going to be suddenly destroyed by the way of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And ultimately this place isn't going to be healed. The economy is not going to be brought back. The dollar's through. You got all these different countries forming their own currency, the BRICS, because the dollar is finished. It is done for. And it's clear and evident by all the way of gold at an all-time high, silver at an all-time high. Gold's at $3,700. Just a year ago, it was $1,000 less. So now you need more dollars just to buy an ounce of gold. So that's letting you know how much the dollar is done. In all these countries, once they send all the debt back, and that's going to lead to hyperinflation. And that's when people are really going to feel it. When a loaf of bread is $250, a gallon of milk is $500. Don't even get me started on beef and chicken. That's going to be completely unaffordable. So that's going to lead to people rioting, all hell breaking loose. You're going to have dollars on the streets, just like in Venezuela. These are all things that this whore America has coming. Verse 9, we will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. So America is not going to be healed. This place isn't going to be made great again. It's done for. It says, forsake her and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the sky. So ultimately, Yahweh Shemiel Shai, the wickedness that goes down around here and really throughout the four corners of the earth, but especially here in America, is to the point where the Lord is fed up with it, because he hears the prayers and the sign and crying of his remnant, and then ultimately Yahweh Shemiel Shai is going to answer the prayers of his saints. The prayers of the saints pierce the clouds. So the Lord hears the sign and crying from all the abominations that is being done in the midst of. So very soon, Yahweh Shemiel Shai is going to crash this place. He's going to allow this devil to come down with that great wrath and start putting, majority of our people to death. And even some of the members of the elect will be caught up, but ultimately they're going to be risen up first in Yahweh Shai. So ultimately America, Babylon the Great, is finished, is done, and is not going to be healed. And that's something that these so-called white people, these Edomites, can't take. They're blaming it on Jake, telling that it's all Jake's fault, that America has, reached the state that is in. But ultimately, is these so-called wicked elite. The small hats, the Amalekites over there in the Holy Land. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 1. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. So ultimately, remember Yahweh Bashmiel Shai, repent while you're in your youth, not when you're in your 70s, 80s, like these Christians, that they're on their deathbed and now they want to repent and turn to JC, thinking that, I'm about to die, I'm going to repent now, then I'm about to give up the spirit. No, ultimately, when Yahweh Bashmiel Shai has called you into this thing, either by you having to walk by the camp, on the highways and byways, or here, the YouTube videos or on any social media platform, that's the Lord calling you to come back and repent, before all hell breaks loose, before the economy collapses, before Jacob's trouble really kicks off, before martial law, before the mass implementation of the MOTB, before the hour of temptation. Verse 2, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. And that's right, while the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is still being given out freely by the prophets, the servants of the Lord. Because very soon, once the prophets get taken out the street corners, when the famine of the word starts, and that's when the Lord is done speaking, and the only thing that's going to be done speaking is the judgment of Yahweh Bashmiel Shai. Verse 3, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out the windows be darkened. So very soon, all these jobs, all these businesses, these executives, these corporate jobs, they're going to be done away with. And to be able to just buy and sell, to be able to participate in society, you're going to have that MOTB. You're going to have that micro CHIP. And pretty much people, it's to the point where they've lost all hope. They don't really see a future in this place. Their optimism is pretty much wiped out. Now it's turned into, a pessimistic mindset. And ultimately, the elect are in the complete opposite mindset. They're in an optimistic mindset, because we know that this place has to collapse. We're looking forward for this place to collapse, because ultimately that's going to lead to our deliverance and our salvation. Lord willing, we'll be a part of that number. While the rest of these people, they put all their eggs in this basket, and now that it's being done away with, that's where they're sighing and crying. Not because of all the abominations that are being done in the midst of it, but they're sighing and crying because this place that they put all their bets on is collapsing. Verse 4, and the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. So ultimately, all these businesses, all these music venues, these sports events, people ain't going no more. They're not buying tickets because people are broke as all hell. They don't have the money like they used to. They don't have that disposable income back in the 80s, 90s, 2000, shit, even the 2010s, before the C-demic, before the 2020 ordeal. So ultimately all these people, they're signing crime because they're looking for new ways to seek comfort, but they're not finding it. They're not finding it through the music. The music nowadays is trash. They're not finding it through, all these different social media, looking for that dopamine hit. All these movies are just remakes of the same shit that came out decades ago. So that's how you know that Yahweh Bashmiel Shai has taken the mirth out of this place, because he's ready to collapse it. America's circling the drain. This is Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 14. The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof. They have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggered in his vomit. So Yahweh Bashmiel Shai ultimately is the one who put that perverse spirit here in America. Because this Egypt is going to spiritual Egypt, which is America. Because America is known as a spiritual Egypt, spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah, spiritual Assyria, because this is a big kingdom, a mixture of all the past kingdoms. That's why you got the the dollar with the pyramid on it. You have all these Washington D.C. buildings, the monuments, the obelisk. You got the memorials built like the ancient Roman buildings, because this is all a big conglomerate of all the past empires that have fallen. And that's why these people are in that same spirit. Just like in the time of Egypt, in that same spirit of worshiping all these gods and idols, just like in the spirit of Rome, worshiping all these pagan gods and worshiping the stars and the moon. People are all in that same spirit of just worshiping these idols, these gods, doing their own will, do as thou will spirit. And that's ultimately why Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is to the point where he's going to start judging these people at a mass numbers. Verse 15, neither shall there be any work for Egypt which the head or tail, branch or rush may do. And then it's getting to that point. People aren't able to find jobs anymore. People's hours are getting cut. People are getting laid off in mass numbers. Businesses, factories, warehouses shutting down, because the Lord is wiping the spirit out of this place out. He's putting a stop to the mirth. He's putting a stop to all this partying, eating, drinking, giving into marriage, because the Lord is about ready to judge this place harshly, because the end of this place is going to be destruction. But first, he's going to send all these different plagues just like he did in Egypt. This is Revelation chapter 18 and verse 1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Verse 2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitations of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So ultimately, when Yahweh Bashmiel Shai really judges this place, when he finally brings it down, when he destroys it by the way of intercontinental ballistic missiles, when he puts it upon the spirit of these kings, of these presidents, to press that button to shoot the intercontinental ballistic missiles over here to America, then this place is going to be through. It's never going to be inhabited ever again after the fire, because the fire is gonna go on for a long time, but eventually is going to be put away, and then it's going to cause that desert to be created, and pretty much it is never going to be inhabited ever again. Nobody's going to set up tent here. The only thing that's going to be here is desert animals, the desert birds, desert land creatures, because the Lord is going to make an example out of America of how and what happens to those who rule wickedly up on the planet Earth. Because ultimately America is the mother of all harlots. Is that harlot that rideth upon a beast. Verse 3, for all the nations have drunken off the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. So ultimately, all these nations have benefited of doing business with America, of taking on the philosophies of America, that Babylonian wine, democracy, the U.S. dollar, allowing them to establish these different embassies, all these military bases in every major country throughout the world. Because America, he has offered all these different, dainties. All these countries know that America is the biggest consumer in the world. So it benefits all these different countries to do business with America. But very soon, once this place gets destroyed, all these different countries are going to be crying, because all these Americans can no longer buy their goods. Like it says right here, verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord who judges her. So America is going to be destroyed in one day, in 1 hour. When those missiles get shot over here, those 200 million warheads to utterly destroy this place. It's going to be overkill. Verse 9, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. So all these different presidents, these kings of these different nations that are used to making business with America, that have gotten rich off of these Babylonians buying all their goods, they're going to be crying. They're going to be lamenting because they're going to be like, damn, look at America, is destroyed now. Nobody's going to buy their goods anymore. All the made in China, made in India, made in Taiwan, that's going to be done away with. Verse 10, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Verse 11, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. So this is what America has reserved, is intercontinental ballistic missile fire. All these countries no longer able to do business with America because of how wicked this place that we call America is. And it's to the point where, the hopeful elect are fed up with it. And we're sighing and crying for Yahweh Bashmi Al-Shai to destroy this place, to bring this devil down, and also to deliver us, Lord willing, to be a part of that number. But that's pretty much the point. Praises edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who do well and who taught us this truth. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Unto Yahweh Shalom.